Well, welcome back to the ProBrick exclusive YouTube channel. You're with Reverend Dr. Jason W. Morrison, otherwise known as ProBricky, from the ProBricky Next Generation Facebook page, where we show all our work and all the rest of it. This is our tradie YouTube channel and family YouTube channel, where we try and reach out to people with life hacks and things that'll help in families and stuff like this, because it's pretty wild out there. We got some step-parent teaching today from Dr. Janine Raymond. We'll do a response to this, and if you haven't already, subscribe, ring the bell, like and share, and let's see how we go. I'll read a scripture before we start, which is the godly care for their animals, but the wicked are always cruel. The godly care for their animals, but the wicked are always cruel.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jeanette Raymond, psychologist, psychotherapist, and relationship expert, here with part 6 of my series on triangular relationships. And the one I'm going to talk about today is between a husband and a wife, where one of them is remarried and there's a stepchild in the relationship. So you have a father and a mother and a stepchild. And one of the parents is the biological parent and the step-parent is not. And that's where the problem begins. In these kind of relationships, it doesn't really matter the age of the child, because there's always a sense from the biological parent that no matter how much they want the person they've just married to be, the main dad or the main mom, they always have a sense of protecting that biological child. There's a sense that the partner they've just married is not part of the family. It's in the DNA, and they become the other, right? The one who's not blood. And there's a natural built-in sense of protection. That's what one version of it is. And so the child learns that they can get away with things, they can go to the biological parent. Then there's competitiveness between the biological child and the non-biological parent. So the stepchild becomes the issue. There's competitiveness for the love and attention and being number one for the parent whose child is in the family. The new person, the partner who's just been brought in, has to find a way of relating to the child into which his life he came in, and it becomes awkward, competitive. The child can either become very withdrawn or act out. The parents quarrel over who has the right to tell the child what to do, what not to do, what the rules are, how to behave.
Because I was raised in this sort of family, I know exactly what to do, and that is to stay out of it. You've got to let the parent, the woman, the parent of the child, deal with it. If you get involved, it's really not fair on the child or you or the parent, because it's not your place. And you might think it's your place, but it's not. It's between the parent and the child, the DNA parent and the child. Anything else is an intrusion. I know that by experience. Unless you're a small child and you regard that person as your parent because of youth, because you're young and you can accept that, that's different. I had a certain amount of respect for my stepfather, but if I had been all the people that came along with my mother that were older, I got along with them, but I didn't have, and I did listen to them at different points, but I just didn't have a parent type respect. I had a friend respect and a respect for them as to being with my mum. The godly care for their animals, but the wicked are always cruel.
and so on and so forth. So that's one kind of terrible dimension. There's another terrible dimension that happens between parent, child, and stepchild. Parent, stepchild. And that is when the new parent coming in wants to win the love of the stepchild. So they spoil the child, they go overboard, they try to be friends with them instead of an authority figure. And then there's tension between the biological child and his or her biological parent. So the new person coming in tries to create a bond between him or herself and the child instead of working on the marital bond. And so again, this triangle creates havoc in these kind of relationships. There's one other issue that crops up with two parents and a stepchild, and that is when the biological parent gives up on the parenting. If they get overwhelmed with parenting before they got married and brought the new partner into the relationship, they're going to want to give up that burden to the new partner, and the new partner wants to prove that they're going to take it on, it's all going to work, everything's going to be fine, they're going to be the best step parent ever, make the relationship so good that, no one would even know that they're not biologically related. So the biological parent kind of gives up and takes a back seat. And then the child is torn between keeping the connection between him or her and the biological parent, or responding to this new parent who's suddenly turning his world into a magical Disneyland.
And that never works. Children aren't stupid. They know what's going on, and it just will not work. The child will turn on you at some point and resent the other parent, resent the DNA parent for not stepping up. There's no way out of being a parent. This is the hard part about it. And you're either going to step up with backbone, or you're just going to be mollycoddling around these children. It's really not, look, to be honest, if you're a step parent, you really got to keep out of it. There's no place for you, really. I'm sorry if you don't want to hear this, to try and move these children around. They're not your children, and it's up to the parent of the children to deal with it.
And that creates a loss of structure within the family, because the mother or the father, whoever the biological parent is giving up ownership, if you like, giving up authority to the step parent, and the whole relationship gets skewed. So the biological parent and their child become more estranged, and the child feels less loved and wanted, gets angry, starts acting out. And the step parent with his or her stepchild, they become the focus of the bond, and so the marriage then starts to fall apart. So in all these different ways, having a person come in as a step parent into a situation where there's a parent and a child has to be done very, very carefully before the marriage begins. There has to be an agreement between the parent and the new one coming in, how they're going to organize their marriage, the parts they're going to play, what's okay, what isn't, how they keep the marital bond the number one bond, and how the child can feel safe with both of them, can trust both of them, can talk to both of them, but they're both going to be different relationships without dissing or disparaging the second biological parent, who may or may not be in the picture, who the child may or may not have contact with. And in these kinds of situations, it's really, really important that the two parents who are going to start a new family with the stepchild have counseling before, a kind of premarital counseling, if you like, and that the family as a whole have a lot of family therapy, so that whatever comes out all the fears about how things are going to go, who's going to feel what, who's going to let go of what, who's going to take over, who's going to start calling the shots, what happens when the child acts out. Or the child could get very withdrawn and regress. This is also very common in younger children. They become more babyish and they want more attention, or they just disappear and do their own thing, and then the parents are wondering where they are and wondering if they're self-harming. So let me give you one example of a family that I worked with who had this issue. There was a female child, about 5, only child of her parents. The father and mother divorced, and the mother was left alone with the child. She felt very insecure. She felt very hurt by her ex-husband's wanting to leave and live a very different life, didn't stay in touch. And eventually the mom met another guy and she married him. And so the little girl had a stepfather. Now the stepfather became more and more possessive of the mother, and so the bond that had been created between the little girl and her mother was beginning to get interfered with. The father came in as the third point in the triangle and separated the mother from her daughter. And unfortunately, because mom was so insecure and afraid, she allowed it to happen. She allowed herself to be completely bossed and controlled by her new husband because she was so afraid of losing him if she didn't do exactly what she said. And having already been abandoned by one man, she certainly didn't want it to happen again. Unfortunately, her little girl had no one to talk to. She had no sense of being loved by her stepfather. She felt her mother going away, and when her mother was sad, if something happened between her mother and stepfather, she was the one who went to comfort her mother. She felt unwanted by her stepfather. He was so controlling that her life was a hell. And
Okay, so controlling is not going to help anybody. And this is where a lot of these women go wrong. They don't do their homework before they marry these people. Then they get married and all this stuff comes out of the woodwork and nobody knows what's going on. Nobody's got a clue what's going on. And the next minute you've got this mess, sorry viewers, the next minute you've got this mess on your hands where they're trying to unravel who's what and what's where, and it's all too late because they're married. The next minute the woman's got a control freak on her hands. That's why I never get involved with other people's children. I'll talk to them and have sensible conversations with them, but when it comes down to dynamics, not my business. It's between the parent and the child.
He always thought the worst of her. He never encouraged her. He always was jealous of her and the bond between herself and her mom. So of course he kept trying to break it, and he would put loyalty contests between them so that if mom ever did something with the child that he didn't agree with or he wasn't included in, he would take it out on mom, and the little girl then became an object of punishment. So when she was 16, she started to stay out longer in the evenings with her friends, and she left as soon as she could. And forevermore, the bond between herself and her mother changed. She had already lost her father biologically because he left and never kind of kept in touch. And now the only father that she did have from 5, a stepfather, was not a father. He was a controlling person who wanted...
And this is really unfortunate. Our stepfather wasn't a controlling person. He was just a drunk, an alcoholic.
to be obeyed at all costs and didn't care about the feelings of his stepchild. He just wanted his wife to do as he said, even if it meant ruining their relationship and creating havoc for the little girl who grew up feeling unwanted, uncared for, and very, very insecure in her adult life.
Sometimes when the dynamics between the step parent, as it were, or the boyfriend or the girlfriend or whatever it is that's not the DNA parent can become conflictive, because the bond between the DNA parent and child can be over enmeshed, can be covertly emotionally over enmeshed. And the conflict with that is, as you try and unbind that so that everybody's emotionally being distributed the right amounts between each other, that can bring this type of interpretation of controlling and stuff. Now, this is sort of similar to there's certain animals that don't like this kind of behaviour, where the mother's too attached to the pup or some other animal, which creates this element of weakness. And that's what it is, it's a weakness. And when you're trying to bring this into order, it can be very offensive and it can be very uncomfortable. But the actual fact of the matter is, you're breaking a surrogate, and depending on the age of the child, usually 10 onwards or something, you're breaking a surrogate bond between the parent and the child, and it can be interpreted as an intrusive, but it's not. It's just getting the dispersion of emotions and where they need to be and where they should be back into order, because the mother could come out of a totally unintimate relationship, and therefore she's leaned on the child over emotionally to fill the gap. Then when somebody comes along that's intimately and emotionally able to function with that woman, then you've got to help her to withdraw the over-emotional expenditure that she's having with the child, which then causes the child to say, hang on a sec, you're not involved with me the way that you were before, but the actual involvement was dysfunctional within itself. And you're trying to bring it back to a healthy level, but unfortunately it's very hard to undo because it's established and confusing. And so therefore the person that's not the DNA part of the thing gets interpreted to be intruding and all this other stuff, or controlling, but it's not always necessarily the case. It's trying to get things back in order, because the mother's become over dependent on the child, and it takes some you're lucky to unravel it, but it takes skill if you can, and it helps everybody.
So this is how the third, an intruder, comes in between two people, in this case mother and child,
and see, now she's interpreting, well, yeah, there are people that are intruders and intrusive into the parent-child space. And if it's illegitimate, that's 100% true, and the woman should get rid of the bloke, to be honest. Why did she marry this person? Maybe it only... See, was she long enough with this person, long enough to identify that this was going to be a possible problem? We don't know. But the truth of the fact of the matter is, this is manifested, and now what's she do? Well, in my opinion, she's got to go with the child, because the adult that's not the DNA parent is not responding properly to the truth of the situation, which is he's out of order relative to trying to be controlling.
Stepchild situation, step-parent situation, where the biological parent is so weak that they cannot stand up to their new partner because they're afraid of losing them, and the parent-child bond becomes completely undone and affects that child several generations hence.
And this is a problem too, because when you've got a parent that's unable to, on the one hand, confront the issues of the child, and then on the other hand, confront the issues of the partner that she has, everybody just implodes, because there's no order. The weakness is not encouraging order, and so therefore everybody just goes down the tubes. And there's different things that get blamed for this. But the fact of the matter is, it's just out and out inexperience in this kind of relationship. And they're complicated. When you're trying to mix strangers in a DNA bonded relationship, it's complicated, man, because there's enmeshments, there's boundaries that need to be... You must respect the fact that you're an outsider, whether you marry this person or not. You've got to respect that. I'm just an outsider. These people had this little tribe before you come along, and trying to help these people get that in order, you can only try to a certain point. If they don't want to or are unable to after that point, you might just be getting told you're controlling so they can protect their enmeshment. Okay, there's several different ways in which this can go, but it's all based on the legitimacy of the complaints, the things that can't be resolved, and the way in which they're going to work out in a fair and honest way.
So again, family counselling is so important. Premarital counselling is so important.
100%.
Individual counselling for that little girl would have been so important.
100%.
She had no one to talk to and was full of all these terrible feelings. Is she a good girl? Why isn't she loved? Why doesn't her mother want her anymore? It was awful, awful, awful.
And this is the thing, see, a lot of these parents try and be the counsellor, the therapist, the doctor. I noticed this in my last relationship. The lady had to help this adult man go and get help. He needed professional help. I don't know if he followed through with it or not. He probably didn't need it after I left the scene. I didn't hear anything. She still kept coming to see me, and I didn't hear about... All I saw, it's up to... See, sometimes it's just the... spiritual conflictiveness of having somebody outside the DNA content of the relationship between the parent and the child. Once you bring a stranger in, there's all sorts of things that get topped and turned inside the spirit and the soul. And sometimes they just can't be resolved. Sometimes they shouldn't be resolved. Sometimes it's human instinct to feel that way. And if the people have got the ability to navigate that, then they're blessed. But for the most part, they can't. They just can't. On the last time, the lady that I was seeing was coming here. I couldn't go down there. I didn't have a problem. I had a problem in the end because they were grown men and they just, I don't know what they were trying to do, but it ruined the relationship. And unfortunate for her and myself, but it comes to a point where people that are demanding your respect, yet have caused the trouble in a lot of ways, and aren't willing to gain your respect, no, they're not going to. They're just not going to work for anybody, those people. In this case, it's a little girl, a little child, totally different thing. I think the little girl needs to be protected from this man, because it's not representing a good way in which he should be showing this little girl how she needs to be treated by men. But standing over and controlling, no. And the mother should step up. That's my opinion. But unfortunately, a lot of these weaker women just won't. They'll just sit there and watch.
Only came out in her 30s. When she sought therapy because she wanted to become a mother herself. So I hope this rings some bells with you. I'll be happy to hear your...
Thank you, Dr. Jeanette Raymond. Subscribe to her channel. And thank you for watching as well. You're on the ProBrick exclusive YouTube channel. This is really helpful stuff because a lot of people wrestle with this and they lose their relationships. If you haven't already, guys, subscribe, ring the bell, like and share the video and comment. And just the last reminder of the scripture, the godly care for their animals, but the wicked are always cruel. You're with Reverend Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist, on the ProBrick exclusive YouTube channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.